welcome back to our channel. Think pennies are worthless? Think again. Like and subscribe to find rare 1-cent treasures today. In the early months of 1984, deep within the humming corridors of the Philadelphia Mint, machines pulsed in synchronized precision, striking copper-plated zinc planchets into millions of pennies destined for pockets, drawers, and forgotten corners of the American landscape. The Lincoln cent, redesigned only 2 years earlier to accommodate the nation's transition away from solid copper, now bore the weight of efficiency and modern cost-saving. Yet, amid that industrial rhythm, unnoticed by the watchful eyes of inspectors and the relentless clang of coining presses, a minute anomaly slipped into circulation. 1 cent, indistinguishable at first glance, would gradually become the nucleus of curiosity, the subject of whispered conversations in numismatic circles, and the crown jewel in a collector's fateful journey. It was just another late autumn afternoon when a coin collector named Elijah Ferris, a quiet man with a passion for forgotten artifacts, sat hunched over his dining table with a magnifying glass poised above a spread of loose change he'd picked up at a local flea market. He didn't expect anything more than a few wheat pennies or maybe a misaligned die here and there, quirks of production that carried marginal worth but enormous personal satisfaction. It was the methodical routine that soothed him, a calming exploration of history in copper and zinc. Yet something about this particular penny stopped him mid-sip of his lukewarm coffee. His eyes narrowed. The coin gleamed under the lamplight with an odd shimmer, but it wasn't brilliance that caught his attention, it was absence. Or rather, an absence of clarity. As he examined the obverse, Lincoln's bust appeared sharper than usual, striking in relief, but something about the details seemed off-kilter. Elijah flipped the coin to the reverse, where the Lincoln Memorial typically stands proud. Instead of the familiar sharp delineation, the details were muddled, almost ghostly. The pillars lacked depth, the letters looked smeared, and there was a subtle doubling effect near United States of America that seemed to shift with every angle of light. He inhaled sharply, his heartbeat rising. Doubling on coins wasn't new, but the type of doubling mattered. Most doubling came from die deterioration or poor hubbing, worth little. But this had character. He reached for his reference guide, thumbing through pages until he landed on a notation, 1984 double die reverse. It was there, faint and obscure in the text, but confirmed. Days passed in a daze as Elijah immersed himself in research. This was no mere coin. It was part of a small subset of 1984 pennies affected by a rare double die error, caused when the reverse die was improperly manufactured, creating a second, ghost-like image slightly off from the original. It gave the lettering and parts of the memorial an ethereal, doubled appearance. Only a tiny number were confirmed, and the numismatic world was just beginning to recognize their significance. At first, he didn't want to believe it. Could he have stumbled upon one? From a common flea market box, nestled between ordinary cents and dull nickels, he sent photographs to a grading service, trembling slightly as he packed the coin with layers of protection. It felt like parting with something sacred. Weeks dragged. The silence was heavy, nearly unbearable. Then the email arrived, verified double die reverse. -58 Australian dollars grade. His hands trembled as he read it again. AU, almost uncirculated. The coin had been gently handled but retained its near-mint condition. It wasn't just rare. It was exceptional. The market had only recently begun to shift around this discovery. At first, collectors dismissed the 1984 double die reverse as an oddity, an obscure footnote in the penny's long history. In the early 2000s, one could find ungraded versions selling quietly online for less than $50. But scarcity has a strange way of fermenting value over time. As more eyes turned to overlooked coins and digital platforms widened access, whispers grew into bids. $100 became $300, and in well-preserved conditions, whispers reached the thousands. By 2010, coin forums were aflame with discussions of recent auction prices climbing toward $800. Then, a pristine MS-65 example surfaced and sold at an estate auction for over $3,000. Still, this wasn't the peak. Elijah, watching the unfolding frenzy, refused to sell. It wasn't greed, it was reverence. The coin had chosen him, he liked to think. Others had likely handled it before without knowing. But it was his eye, his patience, that had seen through its disguise. Yet as values soared and offers rolled in, $4,000, then $6,000, he began to question, what gave this coin its true worth? Was it the doubling, the mint's mistake, the years of obscurity, or the growing hunger for unique anomalies in an increasingly digital world? He reached out to another collector, a woman named Denise Hargrove, who had written a small blog post about double dies and Lincoln cents. Their conversations became frequent, filled with technical musings and philosophical wonderings. One evening, Denise mentioned something curious. Some examples of the 1984 double die showed a peculiar trait. While most exhibited strong doubling on the De pluribus unum motto, a handful also had a faint clash mark, like an imprint of the obverse bleeding into the reverse. She called it an unconfirmed subclass, a potential mint clash overlapping the double die, something incredibly rare and still undocumented in major grading references. Elijah's heart skipped. He retrieved his coin from the vault-like box he kept under lock and key. Under intense magnification, there it was. A faint but undeniable curve on the right side of the memorial. Not a scratch. A mark, deliberate and out of place, like the curve of Lincoln's coat collar etched where it shouldn't be. He photographed it, annotated it, and sent it to Denise. The reaction was instant. She responded in all caps, "This could change everything." Grading services hesitated. They hadn't officially recognized a subcategory involving clash marks on this error, but the images were compelling. Scholars in numismatic journals speculated. Could this be a one-off? A hybrid of two separate minting errors layered into one? Some speculated that a damaged die had been hastily repolished, leaving residual clash elements, then improperly hubbed, producing the doubling. This made the coin not just an error, but an error of compounding chaos. The odds of such a combination? Nearly incalculable. Suddenly, Elijah's penny wasn't just a double die. It was a mystery. A potential new classification. Collectors reached out with unprecedented offers. $10,000. $14,000. One anonymous bidder, rumored to be a museum trustee, offered $18,500, contingent on an in-person inspection and provenance documentation. But Elijah paused. A new question haunted him now. Was he sitting on a discovery the world hadn't yet fully understood? The coin's physical characteristics became the center of attention at a coin convention in Chicago, where Denise presented her findings alongside high-resolution photos and comparative samples. Attendees were stunned. While several known examples existed of the 1984 double die, none showed the clash marks Elijah's coin bore. The possibility emerged that the coin was not merely a double die reverse, but a transitional piece, perhaps struck during die realignment or a test strike phase never meant for public release. What began as a small error now hinted at deliberate experimentation or recovery efforts inside the mint. Could the Philadelphia Mint have attempted to salvage a flawed die, accidentally creating a unique variation? Or worse, was this a coin never meant to survive, accidentally released through a breach in protocol? Theories spiraled. No answers confirmed. But the speculation alone was enough to shake the collector's market. Coin valuation is fickle, but history speaks louder than numbers. The 1984 double die reverse had once lingered in shadows. Now, under scrutiny and fascination, its variants became the subject of articles, YouTube deep dives, and even a podcast episode titled "1 Cent to Rule Them All." Elijah's coin was labeled unofficially as the Phantom Clash, sent by collectors online. The name stuck. Auction houses began including notes like "potential Phantom Clash characteristics" in their listings. Prices surged again. Even regular double die examples in lesser conditions crossed the $2,000 mark in private sales. Still, Elijah held on to his coin. It now represented more than rarity. It was a lesson in patience, a symbol of overlooked beauty, and a reminder that even the smallest artifact can carry immense consequence. He spent years declining offers, instead funding research, sharing his findings, and consulting with numismatists seeking to understand how such a peculiar anomaly came to be. But the twist never ended. 3 years after the coin's rediscovery, another surfaced. In Ohio, a man who had heard the Phantom Clash story discovered a coin with similar traits, sent it for authentication, and received near-identical results, -58 Australian dollars, double die reverse, and light clash marks in the same location. A second one. The find confirmed Elijah's theory: it wasn't a one-off. It was a microseries, so rare it had taken decades to confirm more than one. The discovery rocked the community. Collectors scrambled to re-examine their holdings. Coin grading services created a provisional label, 1984 DDRC/Clash variant, unconfirmed subtype. Elijah's coin, the original, was now worth not just tens of thousands but something less tangible and far more important: provenance. The origin of a hidden lineage. A piece of numismatic lore born not from fame or publicity, but from quiet observation and relentless curiosity. In 1996, as America stood on the threshold of a new technological age, with the digital world just beginning to wrap its tendrils around everyday life, the familiar clink of coins in pockets still held the weight of tradition. At the U.S. Mint, presses ran tirelessly, stamping out billions of Lincoln cents, small discs of copper-plated zinc bearing the enduring profile of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. These coins, each valued at a single cent, were designed for function, not fanfare. They were the quiet soldiers of commerce. Yet within that mass production, a rare mistake was born, subtle, elusive, and destined to escape the gaze of millions. It wasn't discovered for years. Not by inspectors. Not by banks. But by a single collector with the tenacity to look closer. Miles Radcliffe was not a man of extravagance. His pleasures were simple: early morning walks, historical documentaries, and the slow, meditative art of coin hunting. His fascination had started in childhood, with a jar of pennies inherited from his grandfather. By the mid-2000s, Miles had turned his hobby into a quiet obsession. One evening, while sorting through a heavy bag of unsearched rolls bought from a Midwest antique dealer, he came across a penny that didn't quite sit right. It wasn't the color or the shape, it was the lettering. Something was off. He picked it up, brushing his thumb gently over the surface, noting the strange thickness in the date. The 6 looked bloated. The Liberty inscription seemed doubled at its edges. He tilted the coin toward the light, and that's when it caught him: the telltale signs of a doubled die. But not the usual mechanical doubling that plagues common issues. This had depth. Separation. The kind that suggests something far rarer, a true doubled die obverse. Miles leaned in closer. The profile of Lincoln, though familiar, seemed to carry an echo, like a shadow that shouldn't exist. He checked the coin's reverse, which looked relatively normal. But the obverse had the unmistakable characteristics of a true die error. Unlike many doubling mistakes caused by worn dies or shift in alignment, this was something deeper: a flaw in the hubbing process itself, where the design was impressed twice into the die with a slight misalignment, producing an eerie doubling effect that he couldn't sleep that night. Instead, he stayed at his desk comparing the coin against references in his collection, online forums, and archived articles. The 1996 doubled die obverse wasn't listed in any of the major price guides at the time. A few obscure mentions hinted at its existence, but it had never gained recognition like the famous 1955 or 1972 varieties. This wasn't because it lacked intrigue, but because it had slipped through the cracks of mass production unnoticed and undocumented. Determined to uncover the truth, Miles submitted the coin to a reputable grading service. He paid the extra fee for expedited results, though he knew full well that grading centers dealt with thousands of coins weekly. Still, when the report came back confirming what he already suspected, he felt his breath catch. Verified, 1996 doubled die obverse. -55 Australian dollars grade. A solid find. One that placed his coin in a unique position, scarce enough to be desired, pristine enough to be valuable, and rare enough to be mysterious. The discovery didn't make headlines, but among collectors, it rippled like thunder in a distant sky. Internet forums buzzed with curiosity. Some collectors admitted they'd never even heard of a confirmed 1996 double die obverse. A few posted images of coins they thought might match, but most were just worn pieces or examples of strike doubling, superficial and without added value. Miles's coin stood apart. Graded, authenticated, and now talked about among numismatic circles, it had become a reference point. A single red dot on the vast map of American coin errors. Miles, however, wasn't interested in immediate profit. He saw himself as a steward rather than an owner. The coin wasn't just a misprint, it was a story. A story of oversight, of transition in minting technology, and of the delicate imperfection that only the human process can yield. As demand for error coins grew in the 2010s, the market began to respond. Collectors who once turned their noses up at minor doubling started paying attention. Lesser grades of Miles's error type, once going unnoticed, started fetching $1,000, then $2,000 at auctions. More surprising still was that new examples were surfacing, not in large numbers, but in a slow trickle. Most were heavily circulated, damaged, or unverified. Miles kept track, mapping out the known examples, corresponding with fellow collectors, and sharing data with error coin specialists. He discovered that almost all known 1996 double die obverse specimens had originated from the Philadelphia Mint, and all bore a subtle but consistent shift in the "In God We Trust" inscription, making it the key diagnostic point. The date doubling, while striking, was inconsistent, suggesting that multiple dies may have been involved, or that the master die itself had issues that year. But just as Miles believed he had pieced together the puzzle, a twist emerged. A private collector in Oregon reached out with a peculiar claim. He owned a 1996 cent with doubling on both the obverse and reverse. Skeptical, Miles requested photographs. The images revealed something uncanny: the same thickened lettering and date he'd seen on his coin, combined with strange smearing on the Lincoln Memorial columns. This wasn't a simple strike-through or post-mint damage, it was dual-side doubling. If confirmed, it would upend what collectors believed about the 1996 error, that it was limited to the obverse only. The coin was sent for grading, and the result stunned everyone. It was indeed a double-sided double die, an extreme rarity. The numismatic world was now confronted with the possibility that 1996 saw more than one type of die flaw, perhaps even a systemic issue during die production that went unchecked. Theories swirled. Some suggested a worn master hub. Others believed there was a failed transition to newer die-setting equipment. Regardless, the existence of these few flawed coins had now become a numismatic phenomenon. As years passed, awareness of the 1996 double die penny spread, elevating its status from curiosity to collector's prize. At auctions, verified examples in high grades began crossing the $20,000 threshold. By 2021, a pristine MS-66 RD example sold at a private collector's event for over $47,000, shocking even seasoned dealers. Coin magazines began spotlighting the error, calling it the hidden gem of the 90s, and encouraging collectors to recheck their penny hoards. Miles watched this evolution with both pride and disbelief. What he had once seen as a quiet anomaly had grown into a symbol of overlooked value. His own coin remained unsold, though he received frequent offers, many surpassing $60,000. One anonymous bidder went as high as $85,000, contingent upon a private inspection and certification renewal. Miles declined politely. The coin, after all, was more than just its market value. It was a reminder of patience, observation, and the unexpected twists in the journey of even the most ordinary objects. Today, experts estimate that fewer than 150 high-grade examples of the 1996 double die obverse exist, and fewer than 5 have shown signs of doubling on both sides. The coin, which began as an unnoticed blemish in the Mint's high-speed processes, has since grown into one of the most talked-about Lincoln cents of its decade. And while its presence remains rare in public auction, when it does appear, the numbers continue to rise. The last known sale of a confirmed dual-doubled specimen, in an MS-65 red grade, closed for an astonishing $110,000. Even moderately circulated examples with clear doubling now sell regularly between $60,000 and $70,000 when authenticated and accompanied by strong provenance. And yet, most Americans continue to pass over their pocket change without a second glance, unaware that a fortune could be hiding in plain sight, etched in copper and sealed in history, just waiting for another careful hand to lift it from obscurity. The year was 1999. As the world braced for a new millennium, anxiety buzzed through headlines about the Y2K bug, fears of technological collapse, and a rapidly changing digital future. Yet in the heart of Philadelphia and Denver, where time seemed to move slower behind the sturdy walls of the U.S. Mint, age-old machines continued to press the nation's smallest denomination, the 1-cent coin. Billions were minted that year. To most, the 1999 Lincoln cent was just another routine strike, another face in a sea of copper-colored sameness. But buried among the masses, a peculiar error had slipped through. And it would take a quiet, unassuming collector to uncover the mistake that would later rewrite the narrative of one of the most underestimated coins of its era. It was in a modest town in Pennsylvania that James Crowley, a retired postman and lifelong coin enthusiast, carried on his daily ritual of searching through pocket change. A man of discipline and detail, he'd wake with the sunrise, pour himself a single cup of black coffee, and sift through rolls of coins he'd requested from his local bank. He wasn't expecting treasures, just the simple joy of noticing. But that morning, among a fresh roll of pennies, one coin refused to disappear into the pile. Its shine wasn't brighter. Its color wasn't different. But something about the design whispered inconsistency. He paused, lifted the penny toward the morning light, and squinted. There it was, an odd doubling in the date, most noticeably in the 9s. At first, he thought it might be his eyes, or perhaps common mechanical doubling. But the more he rotated it, the more he realized the shift had depth. The doubling wasn't flat or shelf-like. It was rounded, defined, with a separation that felt intentional in its mistake. He reached for his loupe and began inspecting further. Liberty also showed signs of doubling, especially near the B and E. The "In God We Trust" inscription, while less pronounced, appeared shadowed and thicker than usual. James had seen hundreds of thousands of coins over his life, but never one quite like this. He flipped the coin over. The reverse seemed clean, Lincoln Memorial standing straight, letters intact. But that only confirmed his suspicion. This wasn't a strike-through or post-mint damage. This was an obverse die error. He spent the entire day combing through references, old coin club newsletters, and online archives. To his surprise, he found barely any mention of a 1999 doubled die obverse. A few scattered posts suggested sightings, but nothing definitive. It was as if the mint had quietly let slip a secret that no one had taken time to verify. James carefully packaged the coin and submitted it to a trusted grading service, adding a personal letter describing his observations. The waiting nearly drove him mad. Days crawled. Weeks passed. Then the envelope arrived. Inside was the grading certificate and the encapsulated coin, 1999 1C double die obverse, -58 Australian dollars. His heart leapt. This wasn't a minor variety. It was real. Confirmed. A legitimate double die in a year few had suspected. Word traveled slowly at first. Error coins from earlier decades usually dominated collector interest, the famous 1955 and 1972 doubles, or the 1983 reverse varieties. But once the 1999 double die was confirmed and shared in numismatic circles, eyebrows began to rise. Coin forums lit up with speculation. Images were traded. Enthusiasts started examining their change. A few more examples emerged, most in circulated condition, heavily worn, or improperly stored. Still, the buzz grew. By mid-2005, high-grade examples of the 1999 double die obverse began fetching $1,500 to $2,000 at auction. Modest by coin standards, but enough to catch the eye of serious collectors. Then came a surge. A single MS-64 red specimen surfaced, drawing intense bidding and eventually selling for over $14,000. People began to ask, how had this error gone unnoticed for so long? And why did the mint seem so reluctant to acknowledge it? As more data came in, a pattern emerged. Nearly all known 1999 double-die obverse pennies had been minted in Philadelphia. The error was subtle but significant, a misalignment during the hubbing process that resulted in design elements being impressed twice at slightly different angles. The doubling on the numerals, 9, and the word Liberty served as the clearest markers. Experts speculated that a single working die had caused the issue and was likely retired after a short production run. This would explain the low population of the error and its remarkable scarcity in higher grades. Then came an unexpected development. A collector in North Carolina discovered a second variation, a coin exhibiting both the known obverse doubling and unusual reverse characteristics, extra thickness in the pillars of the Lincoln Memorial and a faint doubling on 1 cent. Was this a new subclass or the result of die deterioration? The answer remained uncertain. Grading authorities declined to classify it as a double die reverse, citing inconclusive evidence. But the possibility added fuel to the fire, raising the profile of the 1999 cent even higher. Meanwhile, James Crowley's coin became a point of reference. His find, preserved in near-pristine condition, was cited in collector publications, featured in online videos, and included in a rare errors exhibit at a regional coin convention. He was offered increasing sums, $15,000, $22,000, even $30,000, but declined each time. It wasn't about money. It was about meaning. That coin had come from an ordinary bank roll, passed unnoticed for years, and revealed itself only to someone willing to see. By 2016, as awareness of the 1999 era grew, demand followed. Collectors realized that the late 90s had become a forgotten chapter in error coin history. Everyone had focused on earlier or more dramatic anomalies, ignoring the quiet flaws that slipped through in more modern years. The 1999 double die obverse became a symbol of rediscovery, proof that even in an era of precision minting, human error and chance could still dance together. Prices climbed accordingly. High-grade specimens certified MS-65 red began to command $40,000 and beyond. One example, sold at an elite numismatic auction in Chicago, crossed the $55,000 mark, shocking attendees and solidifying the coin's place in elite collecting circles. Dealers scrambled to locate other examples. Coin grading services reported a spike in 1999 penny submissions, most of which were common, unremarkable cents. But among them, a few hidden gems emerged, pushing the known population of true double die obverse examples to just under 200. Then, in 2023, an uncirculated MS-66 red specimen appeared, its surfaces flawless, its doubling bold, its story confirmed. It sold in a private sale brokered between two international collectors for a staggering $98,000. The number echoed across forums and trade journals. Not just because of the price, but because of the realization that this coin, so ordinary in its origins, had become one of the most valuable modern cents ever documented. And so, the 1999 US 1-cent penny, overlooked and dismissed for years, found its rightful place in the pantheon of American numismatic marvels. A coin born in anonymity, shaped by accident, and elevated by patience. Today, its value ranges between $55,000 and $98,000 depending on condition and verification, with collectors watching every auction, every roll, every pocketful of change, hoping, perhaps, that lightning might strike again. Hidden among billions, one error remains, quietly waiting to be found. The year 2003 slipped into history with a quiet rhythm. The world was shifting quickly, cell phones shrinking, the internet booming, and the United States Mint producing more coins than ever before. It was a time of precision and speed, of high-efficiency minting lines and digital monitoring systems meant to prevent the errors of decades past. At the Philadelphia and Denver mints, billions of Lincoln cents rolled off the presses, each bearing the familiar image of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. To the untrained eye, nothing about the 2003 penny seemed unusual. It looked identical to the ones minted a year before and a year after. But hidden in that flood of currency, something quietly went wrong. That year, a particular coin, one seemingly ordinary at first glance, would break the mold. But no alarm sounded. No mint report flagged a problem. The coin escaped into the world without fanfare, passed from hand to hand, pocket to pocket, until it landed years later in the hands of someone patient enough to notice its secret. Emily Navarro was an elementary school teacher from Boise, Idaho, with a passion for coins that her students didn't quite understand. To her, each coin was a puzzle, a little piece of American history forged in metal and overlooked by most. She had begun collecting during a summer trip to her grandfather's attic, where she'd found jars filled with wheat pennies, buffalo nickels, and silver dimes. It was there she learned how much one overlooked detail could change everything. That lesson stayed with her, guiding her every time she picked up a coin that didn't feel quite right. It was a quiet Saturday morning when she stumbled upon the penny that changed everything. She had bought a few rolls of coins from a local antique shop, a mix of modern and mid-century pieces, and was sifting through them at her kitchen table when she noticed something curious. The year on the obverse read 2003, but the thickness of the numerals caught her attention. There was an unmistakable swelling to the 3, a soft doubling to the left edge of the 2, and most of all, a strange boldness to the word liberty. She brought out her magnifying loupe and leaned in. It wasn't just a blurred impression or damage from circulation. The features had depth, contour, and most importantly, separation. The doubling wasn't flat, it was rounded. She turned the coin under the light, inspecting, "In God we trust," and there too, she saw it, a slight but distinct doubling at the base of the letters. Her heart pounded. She'd studied double dies before, knew how to distinguish them from common machine doubling. This, she thought, could be something rare. Very rare. She checked online references, but to her surprise, the 2003 penny didn't appear in any major catalog of error coins. No official recognition. No widespread listings. Just a few scattered mentions from hobbyists who had noticed anomalies but were often dismissed as mistaken. Still, Emily trusted her instincts. She submitted the coin to a top-tier grading service, requesting full attribution and verification. Weeks passed. And then the confirmation arrived. The coin had been graded -55 Australian dollars, verified as a double die obverse, specifically a variety not widely catalogued. The report included comments about the unusual doubling in the date and inscriptions, a result of misalignment during the hubbing process where the die was impressed more than once with slight displacement. The doubling had not been caused by strike movement or damage. It was a true die error, the result of a misstep in the minting process that left behind subtle yet definitive clues. Emily had discovered something special. She shared the findings with a few trusted collectors, and soon the forums began to buzz. Had the U.S. Mint overlooked a double die in 2003? And if so, how many were out there? The answers didn't come easily. As other collectors began scouring their collections and submitting similar coins for review, a few more examples were identified, each with variations in doubling, but all originating from the Philadelphia Mint. Still, the number remained small. Fewer than 24 confirmed pieces in collectible condition. And among those, only a handful approached the uncirculated range. Emily's coin, one of the earliest verified examples, became a benchmark. The value of her find wasn't immediately clear. At first, offers came in for $5,000, then $8,000, then $10,000. But she held firm, watching as the story unfolded. Coin magazines picked up the tale, giving the 2003 double die obverse its due. It was dubbed the Phantom Double, because of how quietly it had entered circulation, evading detection for so many years. The coin's mystery only deepened when it was discovered that no internal mint documentation acknowledged the error. Some speculated it was caused by a failed die reworking process, others believed it was simply a freak one-off that escaped the usually tight quality control. Then came the twist. A well-known collector from Nevada contacted Emily after reading her story. He believed he owned a similar coin, but with reverse doubling as well. Double die reverses are far rarer, especially in modern sense, and the images he sent revealed thickened lines in the Lincoln Memorial's pillars and doubling on the words, "United States of America." Though not as pronounced as the obverse doubling, it was enough to warrant submission. And after professional review, the coin was graded MS-63 and classified as a dual-side double die. This revelation exploded across collector networks. The 2003 penny was no longer just an unusual variety, it was potentially two errors in one, depending on the specimen. The market responded immediately. Prices surged. Verified examples in mid-range condition rose above $20,000. By 2017, a confirmed MS-65 red obverse double die sold privately for $42,000. Emily's -55 Australian dollars coin remained unsold, still nestled in her collection, but the offers kept growing. By 2020, top auction houses began listing 2003 double die cents as key modern rarities, drawing interest from both error coin specialists and general collectors. The aura of mystery surrounding the coin, the lack of official acknowledgement, the scarcity, and the possibility of dual errors, gave it a legendary status. It became a sleeper hit in numismatic circles, quietly outpacing older, more famous varieties in auction results. Emily's story was eventually featured in a national numismatic documentary, highlighting the thrill of discovery and the importance of attention to detail. She spoke not of value or profit, but of the joy in finding what no one else had noticed. The subtle, almost invisible difference that turned an ordinary penny into a national conversation piece. Collectors today still hunt for the 2003 double die obverse with great anticipation. The known population remains under 100 examples, with only a few certified in high mint state. It's a coin that defies assumption, that a modern cent, minted in the billions, could carry within it a rare and valuable mistake invisible to most. And because of that, every handful of change becomes a potential mystery, every overlooked coin a doorway to history. Now, in the evolving marketplace, verified examples of the 2003 US 1-cent penny double die obverse range in value from $48,000 to $90,000 depending on condition, grade, and clarity of the doubling. For a coin worth 1 cent at face value, it's a reminder that not everything in life should be judged by how it looks at a glance. Sometimes, it's what hides in plain sight that holds the greatest worth.